to look at CSS fundamentals. We're going to understand the basics of making use of CSS when you want to enhance and create a feel and actually make the look and feel of our website to be appealing and interesting and actually a captivating one. And to do that, we need to use the concept. We need to make use of the concept of CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. The Cascading Style Sheet, it's a design language that is used to enhance the appearance of our web pages. And the enhancing of the appearance of our web pages, it's through actually editing and transforming the attributes of a particular element into an appealing one. And this involves making use of the syntax of an element and adding those attributes in that. Now, for us to make use of CSS, we need to define this. You need to define the selector, and we declare those attributes that you want to be associated with that particular element. Every element has an attribute. These attributes are defined within the declaration block, and the declaration block contains the attribute property and the value. For example, if you want our heading to have a particular color like yellow, so we go to within our CSS, we define that attribute, the attribute color, and we say the value is yellow. If it's the font size, we say font size and the size in pixels or in percentage. If it's maybe we want to transform it to uppercase, we also do that. There are different types, there are different attributes for different object elements. For example, the attributes of a heading are not the same as the attribute of a paragraph or an image. So when we go to different elements, we tend to use different attributes depending on what we want to achieve. Now, we have different CSS selectors. We have what we call a CSS element selector. We have a CSS ID selector, class selector, universal selector, and a group selector. With an element selector, we actually have to identify which element you want it to be affected. And this element, for example, if you want the element to be a heading to be affected, we identify the heading selector. If it's you want a paragraph, we identify a paragraph. If it's a page body, we do that. For an ID selector, we give we define a selector we give a selector a name. For example, if you want a selector to work for a paragraph, we just call it param1, and then we usually start that with a hashtag with a hash. For a class selector, we give it a name also, but we start with a full stop. We are going to see the different types of selectors and how they work. Now, our first element is you see the element selector. We start by defining the paragraph and seeing how it works with the paragraph and the elements within that. As you had seen earlier, we're using the header tag. When we're defining the term selectors, we say that we identify the tag if it's a H1, P, HR, either it's a label or something like that. If it's an input box, if it's a table row, it's a let's say it's a list, ordered list, and all that. We just say what we want to, which element we want to be affected by this particular attribute, and then we define the attribute. In our case here, we're saying that we want a paragraph, which the element paragraph to have a color blue and it's centered. The content is centered inside the container. The CSS ID selector we define by identifying the name, or by giving the ID a name. Then we just say the elements within that. Same concept as element selector, but the difference is that this starts with a hashtag, with a hash tag, and then now we define the name. Then we open the curly brackets. We enter the attributes to be affected. We have the CSS class selector. and also CSS Universe Selector. Now, to be able to see all this, you have to do it practically so that you can see it. Now, for us to do it practically, this time I'm going to use my Visual Studio code editor. We said that we have the different code editors, HTML editors, and this HTML editors, as we had seen, we have Notepad Plus, Notepad, Sublime, Visual Studio. We have an Anaconda. There are many out there. Depends on whatever makes you comfortable. In this case, you're going to use Visual Studio. Remember, in the last session, we had created a folder by the name webinar. So we're going to open that folder and be able to see the whole project folder. Now, when you open the project folder, the best thing about using not Visual Studio, you're able to see all the files that relate to that particular file. Remember that our code editor, it has what we call Intellisense. So when you're typing, when you're creating a HTML page, when you enter the elements, automatically it's going to tell us how we can we can add the elements, the elements attributes, and also help us to close the elements. We said that each element has to have a closing tag. Now let's create a folder and a webinar. In this folder, you're going to have all our CSS changes. CSS, let's call it CSS. Let's call it CSS example, so that everything that we are doing will fall under that CSS example. Let's create our first file. You've seen that we want to see how. First, we're going to say inline. Let's say inline CSS is going to work. We will start with that, so that from inline we go to the other one, and then we see how it works. Now, when you say inline CSS, it means this actually tells us how do we define our CSS. Our CSS works within our tag, and after it works within our tag, we're going to see after that how we work within the page and all that. Now, with an inline CSS, it means that whatever we have, the attributes themselves will work on that particular tag only, the tag that we have defined. For example, let's open HTML. We said every document, you have to define the type of document it is. In this case, it's a HTML document. Then we need to open the HTML to define that this way opening tag of our HTML. In this HTML, it has a header. Inside the header, we're going to have a title, so that it shows in our browser the name of the actually what the page contains. In this case, we're going to inline CSS example. Then we're not going to add anything else under the header for now. Below the header, you're going to have our body tag, where the contents of our page will be. Now these are our body tag. Inside our body tags, we're going to have different elements, and remember, our body, it's also an element, so also that we can give it an attribute. Let's start by saying that first of all, let's start open our header tag. Let's say we have h1, and then we say that let's call it heading 1. Okay, I want to increase the size. See. Hope it's visible. Or let's just work it under Sublime. I think Sublime I'm able to change the color, the size. Okay, let's work with the Sublime here. I think it's clearer and the content is visible. I like using the Visual Studio. Now you have created a heading, and let's see, heading not default how it appears. Let's open the webinar page, and then you see open CSS. Let's double click it to open in the different browser, which is a Mozilla. Now these are our heading. By default it has no styling. It just uses the default HTML styling that comes with it, which gives the size of around 32, and default color is black. Now if you want to have it color red, just go back to our, let's go to Sublime here. It is using Sublime. Let's not just do away with the Visual Studio. This is clearer. First we say that we want to give it a style inside our h1 at opening tag. That's why we enter, and we say that we enter our style and say that this style is, we want first style is, we start to say font size. We want to do a font size of around 45 px. Px is a measurement unit for the size. If let's say you want a percentage, you just use a percentage. It's going to take you the screen percentage. You can just say you want to say like 1.3 em. That's a measurement unit. We have a number of measurement units you can use, but we'll be using mostly em and px. These are easiest and the most common one. Let's save. Let's go back to our browser and refresh and see if there's some changes. It has reduced to smaller size. Let's go back again, increase it to 1.5. We say like we want to do this 5. Let's see how big it's going to be. Let's refresh. So that's how big. Again, let's return it. Let's send it to this 2 and see how it's going to be. If let's say we are using h2, let's use a h2 tag, h2. H2, you see heading 2. The heading 2, let's give it a style. The style is a font size. The font size, just use a percentage, and they say that we want a percentage of 48 px. It's going to be bigger, yes, because that's a said that heading 2 is supposed to be a bigger size. And then this heading 2, we can add more attribute. You can say that we want a font family. Now this is a font family. You decide which kind of font to be used. You can say I want to use sans serif, or I can just say I want to see monospace. Refresh. See this different font style. The same for heading 1. You can just use a different font family. We have many fonts. Let's use sans serif. See, let's see the difference between the two. There's a difference. You can say maybe you want to change the font style to be italic. So I'm going to add here font style. I say I want italic, and this other one I'm going to say the font style to be bold, or I can say it's just bold italic. Let's use bold. Let's remain bold. Now, apart from font size, font family, you can decide also to give it some color. So I'm going to give it a color. We have different color codes that you can use to define the color that to be used. We have RGB, we have RGBA, which means red, green, blue, absolute. We have HSL, HSLA. We have a number of them, or you can just use normal color codes, like for example aqua, marine, all those, red, blue, chocolate, all that. For example, let's use chocolate. I can say heading 1, you can give it a color. Let's say color. Let's use the hexadecimal coding, the hexa code. In this hexa code, I'm going to use 890. Let's use 890 FE20 F4. So that's some kind of a blue. Let's refresh the page and see. to use different. Apart from the headings, you can use you can have you can say maybe you want ordered list. Let's use an ordered list. An ordered list, you can say we want to give it a style. We want to give list style type. I say I want to use, you can decide to use Roman, lower Roman, upper Roman, use lower Roman. So this is going to use my Roman number. We're going to use Roman numbers. Say we want to example. Say mango. So this is a list of fruits. Watermelon. Then I close. Let's see how it's going to appear. It's a Roman number. We want to make a copy of the list here, and then change its style. I say I want a square. Because I want to differentiate the two, I'm going to add a horizontal rule in between and see how it appears. Let's refresh. It chooses a square as a side, as a styling sheet. Let's go back again. Let's have a horizontal rule. We give it some style, color. This is style. We can give it color. Before we give it color, let's increase the border. You see it has a border of 2 pixels, and the line is solid. So that's a style. And then you see the color of the line is we can say red. We use just a color that's red. And let's refresh and see. You can increase the size, the border width of our rule to be even around 6 pixels. Let's see what's happened. So that's a simple inline CSS. Now let's try and use inside the page CSS. Remember this element inline CSS. So the other one is supposed to be in page CSS. Now let's start. Let's open a new file. I'm going to save it as more of I'm going to call it in page CSS .html. So you see within the page, if we define that the CSS within the page, what happens? So normally I'm going to use a normal tag. Let's open. Let me copy first this one just to make it true simplified work. CSS. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove everything that is entered with the body. Say in-page. So within the in-page CSS, what happens is that whatever we enter, we define the style sheets, the styling within the header tag. But remember, it's a style. This is a style within the style tag. So whatever we define here is going to be used within the page. It's going to be used within the page, meaning that any element that is in the page is going to have the same color. However, it's going to import this CSS. Remember, the inline CSS is just for that particular element tag only. But now this one, it's within the page. Any element that is within this HTML page is going to make use of this style sheet. styles that we have defined. Now let's start here. Let's say we want everything. Remember we said that we have different selectors. We have we have a universal selector, which means that everything in the page is going to make use of that. Then we have an element selector. Within an element selector means that that particular element, we say that element of this particular element within the page takes this style. Then we have what we call an ID selector, class selector, and also we have a group selector. Now we are going to make use of them. First of all, let's have starting universal selector. Within a universal selector, we start with an asterisk. Then we use the parenthesis. So that means that anything that starts with the asterisk is going to the contents there, those attributes will be applied in the whole page, irrespective if it's a tag, it's an element tag, or it's just a page itself, or that. So let's start with, first of all, we say that we want the background to be of a particular color. So I'm going to use this tag, for example. Then we say like we want to use the font. The font is supposed to be size 18 px, and the color of our text here is going to be black, like that. Then we can say that we want letter spacing in our words to be of, let's say, to px, something like that, and that. Now first of all, let's see, is the background of our page is going to take this 1890. Let's go to our Inline Css. Since the page was not saved, let's save again the page. Oh, I think save the page in the wrong place. Let's open it, let's move it to okay. Now at least we're able to open it. Let's open the page now and see how it's going to appear. Remember the background, we say it's 820. We can give it the background as a inline background. Background as it is FFF. FF stands for white. It's a hexadecimal code for color. Let's refresh the page. White. Now let's have a paragraph within our page. Let's say not even a paragraph. Let's say a sentence. This is the first sentence. Let's see how it appears. Remember we had said the color, text color is black. So let's come in. And you see the letter spacing is around 1px. If you remove the letter spacing character and then you say word spacing, it's going to be a different style. See the way it's changed. Now let's enter a tag. Say that anywhere we have a paragraph, we say the color, instead of 2020, you can say 20, 10, 10. See what color is going to appear, and then we start a paragraph here. Let's refresh. You see there is a difference in terms of weight. Let's give it FE, F3, FE00. Let's see what color is going to change. It's a different color. So any paragraph within our page, it's going to have that different color. Let's look now again for something else that you can change. Let's say that maybe we want let's now that you have used the element tag. This is the element tag. Let's try what element tag we start with. Have an ID tag. We said we start an ID tag with the hash, then give it a name. Let's call it that one. It's a name that you're going to use. So let's go to new paragraph. So in the paragraph we're going to say the font style is italic, the font weight, you see it's bold, and then you say that this color is a little bit different. You say we're using F3, say FE, F3. See what's now. Let's notice the difference on how we work with it. Now within a paragraph, you can decide. We say we want to use an ID. First, you start with say the attributes an ID, and then you give the which ID are you talking about. In our case, this ID that we have created is called para. Then we close our opening tag. Then we enter our paragraph. Is a paragraph. Is a paragraph using the selector, and then we close. Let's see how it's going to appear. Remember the color is different, the italic, bold, and we see the difference between an element that has used an element selector and ID selector. Control. You see the difference. This is italic, bolder, a little bit bigger. Now let's see the other one is a class tag. In our class tag, let's create a class tag. You say dot center. So dot center. The dot center, we say we want to see first align. We want text align to be the center of the page. What else? What I can do? You can see the font size to be a little bigger. We say we want to use 25px. Then we say that you can give it a border. Let's say like it's a 2px, the size of a border. Let's see how the line to be solid. Then we will say we want to give a border color. Color, we can say we want to give it green. Let's see. Let's use yellow green. Now let's create now this paragraph. Let's add a new paragraph. The paragraph will use class selector. You see that it uses a class. The class is a center. Then you say give the text say. Let's refresh our page and see what happens. We have done that. Now you can make use of more than one. Class selector. Assuming now we have a center, and then we say we want another one. Say like moving. You can see we have the width. You can see 300 px. That's the width of the paragraph. You can give it a shadow. Something like that. And then see in our, let's see the difference between a paragraph with a class, with the class center, and it's other classes movie. So we have these two classes. Let's close it here. Let's see. Let's refresh our page. Now that's how it is. Now what we have done, we've used inline Css selectors, and we're going to add even more. But let's see the other one, external Css. With the external Css, which means the Css is somewhere else, it's in another file, and you call it. Now that we have now we want us to this CSS, we copy it, we actually import or we link this page to a particular CSS, and this CSS is external, and we're going to do it easily by coming to, let's go back to our page here. We create another page. This page we call it let's see, call it external CSS .html. Inside the external CSS, we're going to have our pages here. I'm going to use this shortcut. I'm going to copy it and reduce the elements that I don't need for now. And first of all, remove whatever is in the body. Let me say this is an external CSS example. Now you notice that first of all, everything that we import from a different page that is external is not part of our page here content. We are going to use, we enter it under the header tag. Links, CSS style sheet. Now the sources, it's external, so we're going to say my style. CSS. Now we need to create that file here within the same directory, and this file we're going to have external, we have universal, we're going to have element tags, we're going to have IDs and all that, and have them here. Let's first save this one, select open date. So in my element tag you see the font within the page is 20 px. The height, the font family we say is sans serif. Color, let's use black. 2020. Then we see the paragraph. It has border bottom, which is 1 px, and it's solid. We start with that one. Then we say anything that is a paragraph, it has a color of we're going to use hexadecimal height 19 or 20. Then we see that anything that uses a class, let's say .row, it has a width of let's say 900 px, and background of let's say color blue. Then we say that we want to use a group tag. Let's say our h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, h6 all have tags. All of them will have a color. Let's say we can use white with the background. Okay, let's actually use white, which is chocolate. And then we say we transform the style. Uppercase. Then let's use that for now. Now in our HTML, first we want to see how the page appears first. Remember I had said that the page has a font color. We haven't given it a background, so we expect the background to be white, not by default. Let's open Css. As you've said, the background is default by default. Now let's make use of this tag, this CSS that we have defined here. First of all, let's say we want a heading h1. Let's say external CSS. Remember I said that you're using this group CSS where the color is chocolate and it's going to be transformed as uppercase. As you can notice, you've written it in small letters. Let's see if the change is going to be affected. The color has been affected. Let's see the heading. We are going to have the same color. Heading 2. Say h4. Okay, refresh. That's why there's different styles. Now let's see what happened. We didn't give it a single color, so the color is different. Let's see the style transform. It's supposed to be transform. Okay, let's see. Okay, now let's make use of let's say we have something to call a row. Okay, so let's add some align items. So anything that responds within this particular row class is supposed to be centered with a background of blue and sizes 900. So let's come here and then we say that we open a div class, div, and then we see that it uses our class center, and let's put in a div. In a div, here we are going to use h3. In the h3, we see that this is a sectional title. Then we see that this is something interesting. You see the text is going to borrow the the universal. It's going to use actually this text. The word this is something interesting. It's supposed to be using the universal text color. Let's see. This is something interesting. Okay. Cut as a question. Oh, actually, this is a service parameter. It's supposed to be wrong. This one, so that you can have the background as you see. Let's justify content. Align content. Let's see if we have to work justify. Notice the blue where it has reached. That's the size of it. The size you said it 900 pixels. Align content. Not all styles that are going to work for a particular page, they work differently for different elements. Okay, let's create a paragraph within. We're going to create use ID tags within the row tag, the row class, and also by itself, and see how it's going to work. So here I'm going to create HR. Now we can have a HR here element .hr and give it some, let's say we want border of 3px, and 3px it's solid. This border we give a color which is a border color. The border color we say is light cyan, and give it a margin, a top margin of 30px, and let's say you also want a bottom margin of the same. You see how it's going to render. We haven't let's enter here. So we want our HR here. Then under the HR, let's copy this other D that we wanted to see how it's going to display. There's a line in between. There's a spacing between the line and the line at the top and the line at the bottom. Now we're not going to use H1, so let's say you have a paragraph. Then we see that here we have let's open a div. It doesn't have to be div is still an element defining a container. So with this container we want it to use the ID parag. One that you had created. Let's see. You see the color is 1990, so it's supposed to be like maroon, like yes, it has given us. So let's change now let's add another element. Let's say we say that anything that uses any table in our let's be that produced in our pages, we're going to give it a width. Let's say font 8 over 600. This is a table width, let's say 600 px. Let's say that's a width. We give it a border bottom 1px solid, and you're done. Let's say now let's use a nested statement. We say that within a table we'll have what we call t-head. So this t-head, we want it to have a background of let's say let's use this, and the color is white, so the text color will be white. This table will have td, or let's say t-body. In the body we want everything in the body, the background to be white and the color to be black. So then we say that in the same table that t-body we have td. The font size is 25 px. And now let's start here. Let's create a table. This is the table. We have t-head. This is the t-head. Okay, we're going to have a list of countries of the capital city. Let's say country. So let's have the two columns. Then we say like we have a t-body. So t-body, we say that we have a row. Inside the row we have th. Talk of Kenya. So it's supposed to be td, not th. This is not a heading, so td. It's in Nairobi. Then we close. Maybe use a shortcut here. I could just change the values. Uganda. Let's refresh our page and see what we've done. Okay. That's how you make use of our style sheets. The document we are inside our Afrostech GitHub account. We're going to see there's a class called Web Design Webinar, and inside that class we have the samples on the different introduction to web design, CSS, and in the next session we're going to talk about JavaScript and see how you can make use of different JavaScript applications. The JavaScript you can write JavaScript codes, and next also we're going to look at one or two frameworks, JavaScript frameworks, and see how we can make use of it. Thank you.